He took the blows for her daughter. Now the queen wants him forever. Luke Carter wiped sweat from his brow as he walked along the dusty streets of the colony. The sun was hot, beating down on the metal and stone of the settlement. It was not the kind of place humans were meant to live, but it was the frontier, and Luke had learned long ago that survival meant hard work. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with short brown hair, and a face that showed years of stress and careful calculation. He worked as a labor guard, which meant he oversaw the unloading of ships, the construction of buildings, and sometimes the protection of people from troublemakers. Most of the time, the job was boring, filled with long hours of walking and watching. But today, there was tension in the air. Word had spread that mercenaries from another system were moving nearby, and everyone felt it in their bones. Luke carried his standard guard rifle, worn but reliable. He walked toward the Royal District, the place humans were not supposed to enter without permission. The area was surrounded by high walls and smooth, silver towers. Alien guards with long limbs and shimmering skin patrolled the streets. They watched humans carefully, their eyes sharp. Luke did not like this, but he had a job to do. He noticed a small figure darting through the plaza ahead. It was a child, no more than 10 years old. Her hair was pale, almost white, and her eyes were large and violet. She wore fine clothes, bright and soft. She moved too quickly for her small feet, her steps almost floating. Humans did not usually enter the Royal District, and children even less so. Luke's heart skipped. Then he saw the danger. A group of rough-looking mercenaries had broken through the outer walls. They were armed with energy knives and small blasters. Their goal was clear. They wanted to steal or harm someone inside. The child had wandered into the open. She froze when she saw them, fear spreading across her face. "Hey!" Luke shouted. He raised his rifle, but the distance was long and the shots would take too much time. The mercenaries were moving fast. The child did not have time to run. Instinct took over. Luke ran forward. His boots pounded the metal walkways as he reached the girl. He did not think about his own safety. He shoved her behind him and turned to face the attackers. The first blade slashed toward him. He felt the sharp edge cut through his shoulder, burning. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward. Another mercenary swung at him and he caught the arm midair, twisting it back. The child cried out but did not move. She watched, frozen, as the human stepped in front of her again and again. One strike grazed his side. He stumbled but did not fall. The child's small hands clutched at his jacket. "Are you okay?" she whispered. His eyes met hers. He saw raw fear and trust there. "I'm fine," he said through the pain. "Just stay behind me." The mercenaries hesitated. Humans were strong, but few dared to fight someone who protected royal blood. They advanced anyway, weapons raised. Luke dodged a knife and caught another, twisting it from the attacker's grasp. He felt the heat of his blood and the sting of his cuts, but refused to step back. The child was safe. From a balcony high above, someone watched. Queen Vela, ruler of this alien empire, stood silently. Her skin shimmered like moonlight and her eyes were sharp and calculating. She saw the human. She saw how he moved, how he did not falter even when bleeding. She felt something she could not name, a mixture of curiosity and concern. This human, she realized, was different from the others. He did not flee. He did not negotiate. He acted with something that resembled courage or perhaps instinct. The human managed to push the mercenaries back, buying precious moments. Sirens wailed as the royal guards arrived, sleek and tall, armed with energy lances and shields. The mercenaries scattered, realizing the fight was lost. They vanished into the streets beyond, leaving chaos behind. Luke fell to one knee, breathing hard. The child crouched behind him, shaking but unharmed. He reached for her hand. "You okay?" he asked gently. The child nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Luke forced a small smile. "You don't have to thank me, just stay safe." A royal guard approached, his movements precise. "Human," he said, voice firm. "Step aside, the Queen will see this." Luke nodded slowly, still cautious. He had no idea what awaited him. Humans were not welcome in this part of the city, and royal blood was considered sacred. Touching it, protecting it, could be dangerous in more ways than one. The child clung to his side. She looked up at him, her trust clear. Luke felt a pang in his chest. He had never been a father. He had never even had someone rely on him like this before. It was a strange feeling, sharp and sudden. They were led to a chamber of the palace, bright and cold, with walls that reflected light in strange patterns. Luke kept his hands visible. He had been in trouble with authorities before, but nothing like this. The Queen herself entered the room. She moved silently, her presence commanding. She did not speak at first. She studied him, and then she looked at her daughter, Lyra, safe behind him. "You chose to protect her," Vela said, her voice calm but strong. "When others would have fled," Luke swallowed. "She didn't have a choice. I did." The Queen raised an eyebrow. "And yet you risked your life. Why?" He hesitated. The answer was simple but complicated. "Because it was right." Vela studied him for a long moment. She had seen many humans. Some were clever, some were deceitful, some were violent. Few had the courage to stand in front of death for someone not their own. This one had. She could feel the truth in his words, even if she did not understand it fully. "You are lucky," she said finally. "Many would not survive what you just did. The guards will treat your wounds and you will be questioned. Do not make me regret keeping you alive." Luke nodded. He did not argue. He felt the sting of his injuries and his body screamed for rest, but he knew the child was safe. That was all that mattered. As they left the room, Lyra held his hand tightly. "Will you stay with me?" she asked softly. Luke smiled, even though it hurt. "I will be nearby. That's all I can promise." The Queen watched them from the doorway, her eyes narrowing slightly. She could not understand why the human had acted as he did, and yet she felt a pull toward him, a strange sense that he was not like any other human she had encountered. He had courage. He had loyalty. He had something deeper, something her people did not often see in outsiders. Throughout the city, whispers began. Humans were brave, some said. One man had stood against danger to protect a child of the Queen. It spread fast, reaching other species and other colonies. Stories would be told. Fear, curiosity, and admiration mixed together. Luke was taken to the medical wing, where alien healers worked with precise instruments. He winced as they cleaned and stitched his wounds. His shoulder was deeply cut, his side bruised and burned by energy sparks, but the healers did not complain. They worked quickly and Luke stayed still. Humans were known for endurance, but they were also stubborn. He refused extra pain relief. He wanted to feel the cost of his choice. He thought about the child. She had small hands, soft and fragile. She had trusted him completely, and he had kept that trust. He had done the right thing, even if it meant dying. And somehow that made him feel alive. From a balcony, Queen Vela continued to watch. The human's simple act had disturbed her more than any political threat, more than any war. He had done what her own advisors would never do. He had given himself for a child. And now she knew something. This human would not be forgotten. Outside, the city slowly returned to order. Guards patrolled. Citizens whispered. Mercenaries had vanished, but the story of the human who stood between life and death was already taking shape. Luke did not know it yet, but his life had changed forever. He had stepped forward once, and that was enough to set the wheels of fate in motion. One choice, one action, one act of courage. And for Queen Vela, that would be the moment she could never forget. Luke closed his eyes briefly, letting the pain wash over him. He had survived. The child had survived. And in that moment, he understood something simple and powerful. Sometimes being human meant standing in front of danger, even when the world told you to run. And sometimes, that choice would change the course of a galaxy. Luke Carter woke slowly to a soft light in a quiet room. He blinked, trying to remember where he was. The pain in his shoulder and side reminded him quickly. He was lying on a raised bed made of smooth material, unlike anything on human colonies. His wounds had been cleaned and stitched, and a strange warmth spread through his body from the healing machines around him. Alien tools hummed softly, adjusting and repairing tissue with quiet precision. He shifted slightly, wincing, and looked around. The room was empty except for the machines. A door slid open silently, and an alien guard entered. The guard's skin shimmered in pale green light, and his eyes were long and black, reflecting nothing but focus. He did not smile. "You are awake," he said. His voice was deep, musical, but firm. "The Queen requests your presence." Luke sat up slowly, testing his strength. "I'll go," he said, keeping his tone steady. He had no choice, but he felt wary. Being called to see royalty could be dangerous. He had saved a child of the Queen. That alone could make him a hero or a prisoner. The guard motioned him forward, and Luke got down carefully. Every step reminded him of the pain. The corridors of the palace were wide and bright. Smooth floors reflected the strange light from overhead. Guards with long limbs moved silently, keeping watch. He noticed other humans and aliens in the halls, all quiet, as if aware of the importance of the moment. He entered a large chamber. The walls glimmered like silver, with strange patterns that seemed to move in the light. At the center, Queen Vela stood near her daughter, Lyra. The girl was small, still clutching a blanket, but she smiled faintly when she saw Luke. He waved softly. Vela's gaze moved to him fully, sharp and examining. "Human," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "You have caused a stir in this palace." Luke nodded. "I was just doing what anyone should do, protect someone in danger." The Queen studied him. "Humans often say such words, but few act as you did. You risked death for a child who is not your own. You took the blows meant for her. Tell me why." He hesitated. The question was simple but heavy. "Because it was the right thing. She is alive because I did not move. That is enough." Vela raised an eyebrow. She had seen many species over her long life. Cunning ones, brave ones, violent ones. Few humans impressed her. Even fewer did what he had done. Words are easy. Actions are difficult. You chose pain, danger, and possible death for one child. Do you understand what that means for you now?" Luke frowned. "I don't think it changes me. I still want the same things: peace, safety, and work that doesn't kill me." "Ignorance is common among humans," Vela said quietly. "But you are lucky that your ignorance and courage align with something sacred." She looked at Lyra. The child's violet eyes watched the human carefully. She trusted him completely, without question. The Queen gestured to her advisors, who were sitting silently along the walls. Some of them looked uncomfortable, their expressions sharp. One of the older advisors, a tall figure with silver skin and long claws, spoke. "My queen, the human interfered with royal blood. That alone is reason for execution. His presence may cause unrest. He could be a threat or worse, a spy." Vela waved her hand. "Silence." This human acted without orders, without gain, without reason except what is in his heart. That is rare. Another advisor frowned. "Your Highness, a human who harms himself for our bloodline may seem honorable, but it sets a dangerous precedent. Other humans may try similar acts or see this as weakness to exploit." Vela did not respond. She turned fully to Luke. "You are here because of what you did. You are alive because I wish to see the truth of humans. Many of my people doubt your kind. Now I will learn." Luke swallowed. He had faced danger before, but never like this. He had not expected to become a subject of study. "I'm not sure what you want to learn," he said honestly. "I'm just human." Vela's expression softened slightly. "That is exactly what I want to learn. What drives a human to face death for another life?" She motioned to Lyra. The child took a few careful steps forward. "He saved me," she said softly. "He didn't run. He didn't leave me alone." She looked at her mother. "I want him here." Vela's eyes flicked to her daughter. She felt the small hand on her heart. The human had earned trust, had earned life itself. That was a weight no alien could ignore. "You will be treated as a guest," the queen said finally. "Your wounds will be healed, and you will remain in the palace until we understand you. You are free to speak, but every word will be heard." Luke nodded. "I understand." Inside, he was wary. He had no idea what this meant long term. Humans did not usually live in alien palaces, and humans who did not usually leave easily. He was led to another room. It was large, with soft floors and quiet lights. Alien healers waited. They moved silently, their tools humming. Luke's shoulder and side were checked again, and he allowed them to work. Every touch was strange but precise. He felt new strength slowly returning. As he rested, he thought about the child. Lyra had small hands, soft and trusting. She had looked at him with hope in her eyes. The thought made him tense with a strange feeling he did not understand fully. Humans rarely protected children for strangers, not like this. And yet he had done it instinctively. The queen continued to observe. She watched Luke's endurance, his patience, his calm despite pain. She saw the way he interacted with her daughter. He did not coddle. He did not fear. He only protected. It was a lesson in humanity she could not teach. It made her reconsider her assumptions about other species and their loyalty. Outside the chamber, whispers began to circulate. Humans were brave, some said. One human had stood between death and the child of the queen. Others warned that humans might be dangerous, too strong in ways that did not follow rules. Still, some were quietly impressed. A story was forming, spreading through the palace and beyond. The human who acted without thought for himself, who put another life first. Days passed. Luke's wounds healed under alien technology. His body strengthened faster than he expected. Yet he was not free. He remained under observation. Some nights, he heard footsteps outside his room and knew the queen watched. She asked questions through intermediaries. She wanted to understand his motivations, his thoughts, his limits. Lyra came to visit daily. She would sit quietly, sometimes reading from her small book, sometimes simply watching him move around the chamber. Luke spoke little at first, but over time he learned the girl's small joys, her fears, her laughter. She reminded him of simple things humans often forget: hope, trust, innocence. He realized he had not felt responsibility like this in a long time. Protecting her became more than duty, it became personal. The palace was not peaceful, however. Tensions grew. Other species and humans whispered of what had happened. Some wanted him gone. Others wanted him as proof of human courage. The queen's advisors pressed her, arguing that humans should not be allowed near royalty, that one human had already set a dangerous example. But Vela had made her choice. She would keep him alive and learn from him. Luke understood only a little of what this meant. He had saved a child, and now he was caught in something far larger than himself. The palace was full of power struggles, rules and customs he did not understand, yet he did not regret stepping forward. The thought of letting the child die had been impossible. He had made that choice instinctively, and he had lived to see the result. One evening he walked along the palace balcony. The twin moons of the planet shone in the sky, reflecting on the silver towers. Lyra came up beside him, small and careful. "Do you ever get scared?" she asked quietly. "All the time," he admitted, "but you have to act anyway," she nodded. "I'm glad you acted." He smiled faintly, looking at the distant moons. "So am I." He did not know what lay ahead. He did not know if he would leave this palace alive, if humans and aliens could ever trust each other fully, or what the queen truly wanted from him. Yet he felt a strange certainty. He had chosen one thing: to protect, and that choice had brought him here. The days continued, and Luke's presence in the palace became more than just survival. He trained quietly, practiced movements that might help him respond quickly, and learned a little of the alien language and customs. The queen observed each action silently, studying him, learning from him. She began to respect him. though she did not yet understand why she was drawn to the human. One morning, the palace was shaken by news of another threat nearby. Mercenaries had been spotted near a distant settlement. The queen gathered her council. Some suggested immediate military action. Others feared more human involvement, but Luke felt a pull. He remembered the fear in the child's eyes during the first attack. He knew he would act again if needed, no matter the personal cost. The queen, watching him, began to understand something. Humans were not predictable. They did not act out of fear or duty alone. They acted out of choice, conscience, and courage. This was a trait few species could claim. And so, Luke Carter, a simple human from a dusty colony, became more than a guest. He became a figure under observation, a living example of what humans could be. The price of his life, already paid in part with wounds and pain, was not yet fully known. But the palace and the queen had learned this one truth: human life was unpredictable, and some humans could be stronger than armies. Luke did not know the full consequences of his choice. He only knew one thing clearly: he would not run again if a child's life was in danger. And in the quiet halls of the palace, Queen Vela began to feel a change she could not explain. A human, simple and brave, had entered her life. And he was not going anywhere, at least not yet. Days had passed since Luke Carter had arrived in the palace. His wounds had healed, but the memory of the pain remained, a quiet reminder of the risk he had taken. The palace was alive with activity, as it always was. Alien guards moved silently through polished halls. Children of the court played in hidden gardens, and courtiers whispered behind closed doors. Yet for Luke, the world had narrowed. He lived among aliens, near a child he had saved, and under the watchful eyes of Queen Vela. Vela observed him closely. Every movement, every expression, every pause was recorded in her mind. She was a queen who had ruled for decades, and few had ever surprised her. Yet Luke did. He was human, yes, and humans were fragile by most standards. But there was something in him that seemed to resist fear. He did not seek reward. He did not complain. He did not even seem to notice the danger around him the way others did. He simply acted. Today, he was walking through one of the palace gardens with Lyra. The gardens were strange to him, filled with glowing plants that shimmered under the twin suns and paths that twisted in impossible angles. Lyra ran ahead, small feet barely touching the ground. She laughed, a sound bright and innocent, and Luke felt a pang in his chest. He had never known such pure trust from someone so young. "Slow down," he called softly. She stopped and turned, eyes wide. "I can keep up," she said. "I'm not scared anymore." He smiled faintly. "I know, but I have to watch you." They reached a small fountain where water flowed like liquid light. Luke sat on the edge and Lyra perched beside him. They were quiet for a moment, listening to the soft sound of flowing water. Luke noticed the marks on her arms, faint scratches from playing, and realized that life in the palace was not always gentle, even for a princess. "Do you miss your home?" she asked suddenly. He shook his head. "I never had a home like this. Not really. I had a colony, a small settlement. It was simple, but it was mine. Now I just try to survive each day." Lyra nodded. "I used to be scared all the time, then you saved me. Now I feel safe." He looked at her and felt something he could not name: pride, responsibility. Perhaps a strange mix of both. He had protected her, yes, but he also realized that he had given part of himself in the act. He had not thought of glory or reward. He had acted because it was right. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp sound. Luke's eyes narrowed immediately. Somewhere in the palace, alarms rang. The glowing pathways of the garden shifted as guards moved quickly, energy weapons raised. Luke pushed Lyra behind him. Instincts flared. "Stay down," he whispered. He moved forward, scanning the area. The alarm was real, but there was no immediate danger visible. Still, he could feel the tension, the same feeling he had felt the day of the mercenary attack. Someone was close, someone dangerous. From a distance, he saw a shadow moving across the high walls. A small team of intruders, cloaked and silent, had entered the palace grounds. They were faster than ordinary humans, and their weapons glinted with deadly intent. Luke's heart rate increased, but his mind remained clear. He had been trained for danger, and now he had to protect Lyra again. Vela, watching from a balcony above, felt a twinge of anxiety. She had expected humans to be brave, but this was different. The way Luke moved, the way he reacted to threats, was not common. He did not hesitate, did not panic. He calculated, assessed, and acted. And yet she noticed something else. He was not just strong. He was compassionate. He did not attack recklessly. He protected first. The intruders advanced closer. Luke moved silently, keeping Lyra behind him. He caught one by surprise, twisting his body and using the intruder's momentum to throw him into a fountain. The water splashed high, and the attacker coughed, blinded by the light. Two others lunged at him with knives. Luke blocked with quick motions, catching their arms, throwing them apart. He felt pain in his shoulder, a reminder that his body was still healing, but he did not falter. Lyra watched wide-eyed. She wanted to run, but she knew instinctively to stay behind him. She had seen him act once before, and now she understood that he was the only one who could protect her. The palace guards arrived moments later, moving in formation. The intruders were trapped. They attempted to fight, but Luke held them off until the guards secured the area. Finally, the threat ended. Breathing heavily, Luke turned to Lyra. "Are you okay?" She nodded, shaking slightly. "Yes, you saved me again." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's what I do." Vela descended to the garden, her presence commanding. She approached Luke slowly, her eyes fixed on him. "You risk yourself again," she said quietly, though her voice carried the weight of authority. "Even when your body is not fully healed." "Why?" Luke looked at her, sweat and dirt on his face. "Because she is alive. That's all that matters." The Queen studied him closely. She realized that the human's courage was not a simple matter of bravery. It was something deeper. Humans could be unpredictable, loyal beyond reason, and willing to endure pain for others. This was rare, and it fascinated her. "You are remarkable," she said finally, "not just for your strength but for your choices. Many would run, you do not, you endure." Luke shrugged. "I don't know about remarkable, I just act when it matters." Vela nodded slowly. She began to understand the significance of his actions. In her species, strength was measured by power, control, and obedience. Humans measured strength differently. They measured it by choice, by conscience, by what they would risk for others. "You are not like the humans I have known," she said. "You are different." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's because most humans don't get the chance to face something like this. When it matters, you just do what you have to." The Queen remained silent for a moment, thinking. She looked at Lyra, who was watching her mother and Luke with wide eyes. She realized that the child's trust in this human was complete, and that trust was not given lightly. It was a bond that could not be broken easily. Later in the palace hall, the Queen spoke to her advisors. "This human is not merely a protector. He is a lesson. He is proof that humans can be stronger than we believe. He endures because he chooses to endure. He sacrifices because he chooses to sacrifice. This is a trait we should not ignore." Some advisors murmured among themselves, uneasy. One said, "Your Highness, he is still a human. He could turn against us. He could fail." Vela shook her head. "His choice has already proven him. Do not confuse fear with wisdom. We will watch, yes, but we will also learn." In the following days, Luke continued to train and move through the palace. He became familiar with the guards, the hidden paths, and the routines of the royal family. He learned to anticipate danger, to stay alert, to act before threats could reach Lyra. The Queen observed all of it silently, always calculating, always learning. One afternoon, as he walked through a quiet corridor, Lyra ran to him, clutching a small device. "Look," she said. "I made something that can help you see if someone is coming." He examined the device, impressed by the child's ingenuity. "That's smart," he said. "You might be useful to a soldier someday," she giggled. "I just want to help you keep me safe." Luke looked at her, feeling a deep sense of responsibility. This was no longer just a duty. It was personal. He had saved her once, and he would do it again and again if needed. The Queen watched from a distance, hidden behind a column. She felt something stir within her that she could not name. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was admiration and something else. The human's loyalty, his endurance, and his courage had left a mark on her. She realized that she wanted him close, to understand, to witness, and perhaps to remain near, not out of necessity, but because he represented something rare and powerful. The palace settled into quiet again, but danger remained in the world outside. Mercenaries, spies, and rival factions still plotted. Luke knew that the next attack could come at any time. He also knew that he would face it, not because he had to, but because he chose to protect those who could not protect themselves. And so, Luke Carter became more than a visitor in the palace. He became the shadow that moved ahead of threats, the shield that stood between life and death. The Queen observed him, the child trusted him completely, and the palace slowly learned that humans, though fragile, could be unstoppable when they chose to endure. In the quiet of the gardens, under the glow of alien suns, Luke and Lyra trained, practiced, and learned together. Each day strengthened their bond. Each day reminded Luke why he had stepped forward in the first place. And each day, Queen Vela watched, realizing that the human who had once taken the blows for her daughter was no ordinary man. He was a human who would endure, and that endurance could shape the fate of more than just a child. And somewhere deep inside, Vela knew that the human would not only protect her daughter. He would challenge her understanding of humans, of loyalty, of courage, and perhaps of what it meant to be worthy of trust and admiration. Luke had stepped forward once, and now the Queen was watching. She would never forget him. The palace was quiet in the early hours of the twin suns, but the halls were filled with tension. Luke Carter walked carefully, still recovering from the minor injuries of recent skirmishes. He had become familiar with the palace, the guards, and even the strange creatures that lived in the gardens. Yet, despite all this, he could feel the weight of the Queen's gaze. She watched him always, not with suspicion, but with an intensity he could not yet understand. Lyra, the child he had saved, was at his side. She had grown more confident in the last weeks, moving through the palace with curiosity and trust. She had learned to hide behind him in case of danger, to follow his instructions, and even to carry small tools that might help in emergencies. Luke had begun to feel responsible in a way he had never felt before. She was not just a child of the Queen. She was a life he had chosen to protect. Today, he was called to the Queen's private chambers. The hallways were brighter than usual, light reflecting off the smooth walls. The air felt heavier, charged with purpose. He entered carefully, bowing slightly as the doors slid open. Vela was there, standing near the window, her gaze fixed on him. Lyra remained at the side, watching silently. "Human," Vela said, her voice calm but firm. "You have acted with courage beyond measure. You have protected my daughter twice, and you have endured pain willingly. Your choices have not gone unnoticed." Luke straightened, wary. "I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because she needed protection." Vela nodded. "And yet, because of your actions, you face a decision now. You have created a bond that in my people is sacred, a life debt. You saved the royal heir, and now that debt ties you to her, and to me, in ways you may not yet understand." Luke frowned. He had heard stories of life debts in alien culture, but he had never imagined being part of one. "What does that mean?" he asked cautiously. Vela moved closer, her eyes serious. "In my species, when someone saves the life of the royal bloodline, the savior is bound to the throne. It is a sacred duty. It is not optional. It is not negotiable." Luke felt his stomach tighten. "So, I have no choice." You have a choice, Vela said slowly. You may leave, return to your human colony and live a life free of obligation. You would be honored for your actions and no one would pursue you. Or you may remain here, bound by the life debt, as protector, guardian, and close companion to the royal family. The choice is yours, but it will change your life forever. He thought about it in silence. Returning to his life in the colonies sounded easy. He could go back to simple work, food, and rest. He could leave the palace, leave the alien world, and pretend none of this had happened. Yet the thought of leaving Lyra unprotected, of walking away from someone who trusted him completely, made his stomach twist. Lyra stepped closer, small hand brushing his arm. "Please stay," she whispered. "I'm scared without you." He looked at her, her violet eyes wide and trusting. He thought of the day he had taken the blows, of the fear he had felt and conquered. He thought of the nights he had spent training, guarding, and learning the palace ways. And he realized that his choice had never been about duty alone. It had been about protecting life, no matter the cost. Vela studied him carefully. She saw the hesitation, the weighing of options. She had expected him to choose freedom, as most humans would. Yet she also sensed the depth of his loyalty, the strange human instinct to protect those who cannot defend themselves. It was a trait her people admired but rarely understood. "You understand what this means," she said quietly. "If you stay, you will not have the freedom you knew. You will live within the palace, bound to my bloodline. Danger will follow and your life will always be under observation. It will not be easy," Luke nodded slowly. "I understand." He looked at Lyra again and then back at the Queen. "I'll stay, not because I have to, but because I want to. Some lives are worth standing in front of, no matter the risk." Vela's eyes softened slightly. She had expected respect, perhaps gratitude, but not this quiet, firm declaration. It was human, yes, but rare even among humans. She felt a shift in her feelings, a recognition that this human was extraordinary in ways she could not fully explain. "Very well," she said. "Then you are bound to the royal family. Lyra will be safe and you will be honored as protector. This is not a reward, it is your duty. But know this, your courage will shape the perception of humans across the galaxy. Many will see your actions and reconsider what your species is capable of." Luke felt a strange sense of calm. He had chosen the path he always would have taken instinctively. It was not about honor, glory, or fear of punishment. It was about protecting life. And in that choice he had found purpose. In the following weeks his role became clear. He trained alongside the palace guards, learning alien combat techniques and refining his human skills. He mapped the palace grounds, discovering hidden passages, secure rooms, and escape routes. He studied the behaviors of court members, understanding who could be trusted and who could not. Lyra followed him everywhere. She learned from him, imitated his movements, and began to anticipate danger before he did. She carried small tools, prepared small distractions, and listened carefully to his advice. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. She trusted him completely, as only a child can. Vela watched from a distance, fascinated. The human was unlike any other creature she had known. He was strong, yes, and enduring, but he was also compassionate. He did not act for reward or fear. He acted because it was the right thing. She began to see that humans could be powerful in ways her species had not understood. One evening, while the palace rested under the twin moons, Luke stood on the balcony with Lyra. The city below shimmered in soft light. He felt the weight of his choice, but not with regret. He had given up freedom, yes, but he had gained purpose, trust, and something he could not have predicted, a deep connection to another life. "Do you ever regret staying?" Lyra asked softly. He shook his head. "No, I saved you once and I would do it again." "That is enough for me," she smiled faintly. "I'm glad you're here. I feel safe." He looked at the city below, thinking of the challenges ahead. Danger still lingered in the galaxy, mercenaries, political rivals, and other threats. But he knew one truth, he would face them all. He had chosen this path and he would not turn back. Vela entered quietly, her presence commanding yet subtle. She stood beside them on the balcony, watching the distant horizon. "You are brave, human," she said, "braver than many of my own people. And your loyalty, it is extraordinary. You have bound yourself to us not through command or reward, but through choice. That is a strength even we must respect." Luke nodded. "I don't do it for respect. I do it because it is right. Protecting life, that is enough." Vela studied him in silence, realizing something important. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they had a kind of courage that could not be measured by weapons or politics. It was a courage born from conscience, from the simple desire to do right, even when it was costly. She understood now why she wanted him near, not just for the child's safety, but because his presence challenged her understanding of loyalty, honor, and strength. The days turned into weeks. Luke's role as protector became widely known within the palace. Other species and human envoys began to hear of the human who had taken the blows for the queen's daughter and had chosen to remain. Whispers spread of his endurance, his courage, and his quiet wisdom. He became a symbol, not of power or conquest, but of human loyalty and moral strength. One night, as he rested in his chamber, he thought about the choice he had made. He had given up freedom, yes, but he had gained something more valuable: trust, purpose, and a connection that transcended species. He realized that sometimes choosing the hard path, the one that others would avoid, was the true measure of strength. Lyra knocked softly and entered, holding a small bouquet of alien flowers. "For you," she said, "to say thank you." He took the flowers, smiling. "Thank you, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," she said simply. "You saved me, you chose to stay, that matters more than anything." He nodded, feeling the weight and the warmth of the moment. He had chosen to protect, and that choice had changed everything. The palace, the queen, the child, and perhaps even the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. Vela watched silently from a distance, understanding that the human had not only saved her daughter, but had also altered the course of her empire in subtle ways. He had shown her a truth her people had rarely acknowledged. Courage, loyalty, and choice could be stronger than armies, stronger than politics, stronger than fear. And so Luke Carter stood in the palace, bound by choice and honor, prepared to face whatever the galaxy might bring. He had chosen to protect, and that choice would define not only his life, but the lives of those he vowed to guard. He had taken the blows once, and now he had chosen to take them forever, for the child, for the queen, and for a duty that transcended fear. Luke Carter had settled into his new life. The palace, once a strange and alien place, had become familiar. He knew every hallway, every guard rotation, and even the hidden paths that Lyra liked to explore. Yet, familiarity did not make him careless. He remained alert, prepared for any threat, because danger was never far in a world filled with politics, spies, and those who would harm the royal family for power. Lyra, the child he had once saved, had grown bolder. She walked beside him now, small but confident. Her violet eyes shone with trust and curiosity. She carried small tools he had helped her make, and she listened carefully when he taught her how to notice danger before it arrived. She trusted him completely, in a way that no one else could earn. Queen Vela watched both of them from her private chambers, her thoughts complex. Luke had chosen to stay, accepting the life debt that bound him to her daughter. She had expected duty, but what she found was more profound: devotion, courage, and a kind of loyalty that was rare across the galaxy. She realized she wanted him close, not just as a protector, but as a symbol of what humans could offer, a force of endurance, choice, and conscience that few species understood. One morning, the palace was shaken by alarming news. Scouts reported that a band of mercenaries had gathered near a nearby human settlement, planning to attack. They were armed with new weapons, faster and deadlier than the ones that had come before. The palace council convened immediately. Some urged caution, suggesting that humans handle the threat. Others feared that a human acting alone could endanger the royal family. Vela's eyes turned to Luke. She knew what he would do. He did not wait for orders or debate the risks. He acted because he had chosen to protect, and he would not hesitate now. "Prepare for immediate response," she said, "and take him with you." Luke nodded silently, already calculating the steps he would need to protect the colony and his princess. He gathered his gear, checked his weapons, and moved quickly, Lyra following closely under his instructions. The human instinct to act, to shield life at all costs, was stronger than fear or fatigue. They arrived at the edge of the settlement under the cover of darkness. The mercenaries were approaching, moving with deadly precision. Luke's heart pounded, but his mind was calm. He analyzed their movements, noticing patterns, timing, and weaknesses. He positioned Lyra behind cover, then stepped forward himself. The first mercenary appeared from the shadows, aiming a blaster. Luke moved instantly, intercepting the attack, throwing himself between the child and danger. The shot grazed his arm, burning, but he did not falter. He twisted, knocked the weapon away, and countered with precise strikes. Each move was measured, efficient, human instinct refined by training and sheer determination. Lyra watched, wide-eyed but not afraid. She had seen him act before, and she knew now that he would endure anything to keep her safe. She raised a small signal device, alerting the palace guards who had followed quietly. Energy pulses flashed, creating barriers that slowed the mercenaries and gave Luke a chance to neutralize threats. Vela observed from a distance, monitoring the situation through advanced sensors. She felt a swell of pride, not just in the human, but in what he represented. Humans, she realized, were unpredictable, capable of courage and endurance beyond her expectations. One human, standing alone, could change the course of events without armies, without politics, simply through choice and action. The battle was tense. Luke took blows, avoided attacks, and shielded Lyra whenever the mercenaries tried to advance. He used strategy as much as strength, manipulating the environment to his advantage. He pushed the attackers into traps, slowed their movements, and protected civilians caught in the crossfire. The human moved as if the risks were secondary, his focus absolute. Finally, the mercenaries realized they could not win. Reinforced by the palace guards and hindered by Luke's skill, they retreated into the night. The settlement was safe. The human had once again taken the blows meant for others, enduring pain and risk without hesitation. Lyra ran to him, her small arms wrapping around his waist. "You saved everyone," she said softly. "Again." He knelt down, holding her close. "That's what I do. It doesn't matter how many times, as long as people are safe." Vela arrived moments later, walking slowly through the clearing. She approached Luke, who stood, still breathing heavily from the fight. Her expression was unreadable at first, then softened. "You are remarkable," she said, "not only in skill but in spirit. You have saved lives not because you must, but because you choose to. That is something few understand." Luke wiped sweat and blood from his face. "I didn't do it for praise. I did it because it was right." Vela nodded. She looked at Lyra, who beamed with pride and trust. Then she turned back to Luke. "You have proven something important today. Humans are more than their strength. They endure, they choose, and they protect. And now you are closer to me and this family than anyone else. Not as a servant, not as a soldier, but as a symbol of what loyalty truly means." He felt a strange weight in her words. He had accepted the life debt, but now it carried meaning beyond duty. It carried recognition, understanding, and a bond that transcended fear or obligation. He was not just a protector. He was a human who had shown that courage, choice, and loyalty could shape the world. Days turned into weeks, and the story of Luke Carter spread throughout the galaxy. Humans were no longer seen as fragile or reckless. They were respected, feared in a quiet way, admired for their endurance and moral courage. Colonies and courts spoke of the human who had stood between death and a child, who had chosen to remain, who had faced danger willingly. Within the palace, life settled into a new rhythm. Luke trained constantly, guarding Lyra, teaching her skills and preparing for threats that could arise at any time. Lyra grew more confident, learning quickly, and sometimes assisting him in small ways. The bond between them was unbreakable, forged in trust and shared experience. Vela watched with increasing fascination. She had chosen to let him stay, expecting a guardian, and found something more profound, a living lesson in loyalty, courage, and the human spirit. She began to seek his counsel, not because he was royalty or advisor, but because he saw the world differently, with clarity, instinct, and moral conviction. One evening, the three of them stood together on the palace balcony, overlooking the city. The twin moons reflected in the pools below, casting soft light on the towers and streets. Luke glanced at Lyra, who was quiet, thoughtful, and attentive. He realized how much he had changed. He was no longer just a human from a dusty colony. He was bound to this family, this palace, and in a way this empire. Vela stood beside them, silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice calm and firm. "You have shown me what humans can be, not just strong or clever, but enduring, moral, and loyal. You have protected my daughter, my family, and now you have changed the way we see your kind. You are a part of this palace, this bloodline, and this empire." Luke nodded. He did not seek recognition. He had chosen to stay because it was right. The acknowledgement was not necessary, but it was understood. Lyra leaned against him. "I'm glad you stayed," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "So am I. I will always be here to keep you safe." Vela watched them, feeling a rare warmth. She had expected duty, but she had found something deeper: trust, loyalty, and the quiet, steady courage of a human who had chosen to endure. She realized then that the human would not only protect her daughter, but also inspire her people, her allies, and even her enemies to understand that humans were more than they seemed. The palace settled into quiet once more, but the memory of danger remained. Luke knew the galaxy would never be free of threats. Mercenaries, rival factions, and enemies lurked in shadows. Yet he also knew one truth: courage, loyalty, and choice were stronger than fear, weapons, or politics. He had shown it once, and he would show it again whenever life required. And so Luke Carter became more than a protector. He became a symbol. The human who took the blows for a child, who chose to remain forever, who endured danger and pain willingly, and who inspired trust, respect, and awe. He was no longer just a human from a distant colony. He was a part of the palace, the empire, and the story of the queen and her daughter. Vela had said he was remarkable, and she was right. Not for power, not for conquest, not for fear, but for the simple, unyielding courage to protect life, no matter the cost. And in the quiet halls of the palace, under the twin moons, the human who had once stepped forward to take the blows for a child smiled faintly, ready for whatever the galaxy might bring. He had chosen to endure, to protect, and to remain. And that choice would define him, and the future of those he loved, forever.